Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Midlife Crisis, the show where I talk about every major DC crossover event in chronological order. Last week we started Infinite Crisis, where we talked about issues 1 through 3, as well as all of the tie ins that took place in between them. This week we are going to be continuing and concluding Infinite Crisis by reading issues 4 through 7 and all of the tie ins that take place in between them. And right off the bat, we are starting with a tie-in, because we finished on Infinite Crisis issue 3 on the last part, and so we're starting with a tie-in in this one. If you haven't watched the last video, then go and watch it, because you might be confused as to what's going on right now, because we're right bang in the middle of the event. So the tie-in that we're going to be starting with today is JSA issue 82, written by Paul Levitz, with art by George Perez and Bob Wyachek, Wachek. This one's good because even though it doesn't directly tie to Infinite Crisis or like what's currently going on in it, it is about Earth 2 Superman and Earth 2 in general, as we get to see one of Earth 2's Superman's adventures and some of the events that would eventually lead him to making the choices that he makes in Infinite Crisis. So it begins with Power Girl, who is also from Earth 2. She was one of the only survivors of Earth 2 who ended up on Earth 1, Jay Garrick being another one. And she's recently remembered everything about Earth 2, and she gets given a notebook from Lois Lane of Earth 2, who is currently dying of old age. And she returns to her Ma's house, where she gives her the notebook and says that it's written in some kind of secret code, and she wants her Ma to give it to Mr. Terrific so he can try and figure out what it says. But Ma realizes that it's just shorthand, and that's why she can't read it. And so Ma reads the notes, and it turns out that it's one of Earth 2 Lois Lane's final stories that she wrote in her old age. And so we get to see a glimpse of what Earth 2 Lois and Earth 2 Superman were living in before Infinite Crisis happened. So they were in another dimension that was supposed to be like heaven to them, so they got to live out their greatest fantasies. So even though Earth 2 Superman's entire world was dead, including characters like Batman and Wonder Woman and Jay Garrick, like were all technically dead, to him they were still alive because he was living like a holographic fantasy of them. So we get to see him teaming up with Batman, and because it's Earth 2, it's based on like the 1950s comics. So it's like Adam West looking Batman with a classic looking Superman. So they team up together in order to take down the Gentleman Ghost, who is a classic villain that still exists in the comics, but this is like the old version of him. So he's like a villain of Hawkman. And so, yeah, Batman and Superman team up together in order to stop the Gentleman Ghost from stealing some jewels and a pretty expensive book. And they're kind of wondering, like, what the connection is between the two of them, but they don't really come to a conclusion. It just seems like Gentleman Ghost is stealing things that are directly connected to his past because, he is a character that has lived for many years. He, like, died and then remained a ghost that was able to still physically affect reality, you know? So even though he's a ghost, he can still hurt people physically and stuff like that. So he's just collecting memorabilia from his past and trying to steal stuff. Wonder Woman shows up briefly in this, where towards the end of the book, she shows up in order to fight Gentleman Ghost. And Jay Garrick also shows up as well and helps Superman and Batman defeat Gentleman Ghost and arrest him. But unfortunately, he gets away, as most villains did back then. So despite the attempts of Wonder Woman, Jay Garrick, Superman, and Batman, Gentleman Ghost still manages to get away from them all. And so Superman returns to Lois Lane. It's funny because, like, when he's teaming up with Batman and stuff, because it's his fantasies, we get to see, like, a younger Earth 2 Superman. But in reality, he's actually really old. And he returns to Lois and he gives her some flowers. And she talks about how he's like, oh, you still like jotting down like notes in your notepad, and she's like, old habits die hard, and Superman's like, can we not talk about dying? And Lois is like, look, I'm content with dying. I've come to terms with it, and I'm just trying to live the best life that I can with the time that I have left. And so this is kind of building towards Lois is okay with dying of old age, but Earth 2 Clark isn't okay with it. And you can tell by the way that he looks at her. And so it's kind of building up to his choice to help Alexander Luthor erase Earth 1 and replace it with Earth 2 because he doesn't want Lois Lane to die. And the book ends with Power Girl having nightmares about the choices that she's going to have to make because she has to pick between Earth 1 and Earth 2. And she doesn't want to pick. She comes from Earth 2, but she has a lot of friends on Earth 1 and a lot of people that she knows on Earth 1. And she doesn't want to pick Earth 2 if it means that everyone on Earth 1 is going to die. So she's trying to figure out a way where both people can be happy, both Earths can exist simultaneously. And so that's that tie-in. And like I said, while it doesn't take place in the present day of Infinite Crisis and doesn't tie heavily into Infinite Crisis, it was pretty cool getting to read like a crossover story between like an old story of like Earth 2 Superman and Earth 2 Batman teaming up, especially because we know that Earth 2 Batman is dead, and that has really affected Earth 2 Superman. Alright, there are 2 Aquaman tie-ins, but I don't even know why they're listed on here because they're not really worth talking about. The only thing that happens in them is Aquaman deals with the destruction of Atlantis after the last load of tie-ins that he had, and he fights Black Manta, and that's it. That's all that really happens in it. He just reminisces about the past, gets really depressed that Atlantis has been destroyed, and then he fights Black Manta alongside his friends. And that's everything that's worth really talking about that. They're only worth reading if you're actually reading Aquaman, and I'm not reading Aquaman, so I don't really care. And I don't need to read these issues. Alright, so there's a couple of Robin tie-ins that we gotta talk about, and these are actually worth talking about because they do somewhat tie into Infinite Crisis because they feature Omax from the Infinite Crisis book, so I think they're worth talking about. We're starting with Robin issue 143, written by Bill Willingham, with art by Andy Owens, Guy Major, and Scott McDaniel. This is one of those things where it's like, the problem with tie-ins is sometimes they're just continuing the story while adding in the event stuff. And so there are characters in this where I have no idea what's going on. I have no idea who these characters are. There's this girl called Laura Fell who apparently tried to kill Tim Drake previously, and she thought she did. But when it turns out he's still alive, she is really confused. And she's working with this guy called Johnny Warlock, who is apparently another Tim Drake villain that has the ability to use magic. So he's teamed up with Laura Fell, and he gets really pissed off at Laura when he realizes that Tim is still alive. So he tries to kill Laura for failing at killing Tim, and Omax are attacking Bloodhaven. So, like, there are different villains being attacked by Omax. Like, there's this guy, who's like a dog. What's his name? Junkyard Dog. So he's like running away from a bunch of Omax, and he bumps into this character called Gasbag, who's apparently another villain, and then the Omax show up and they kill Gasbag, but because Gasbag has like toxic gas inside him, the gas kills the Omac, allowing Junkyard Dog to run away, like to get away, and then Junkyard Dog just doesn't appear in the rest of the issue. But Gasbag, unfortunately, I only just met you and you're already dead. Warlock tries to kill Tim Drake in this. And apparently Johnny Warlock's abilities is that, like, he kind of manifests his own power and can affect reality with the way that he thinks. And so he thinks that Tim Drake is super duper powerful and deadly. And so when he tries to kill Tim Drake, his powers don't work against him because he's tricked himself into thinking that Tim Drake is super powerful, so he can't even beat him. It's like one of the stupidest ways a villain has ever died, is that, like, they thought that their enemy was way too powerful, and so they ended up not even being able to beat them. It's such a funny way for this guy to get beaten, where he's just like, oh, Tim Drake is super deadly. I guess I can't beat him. Like, his magic just doesn't work on him. Also, Tim is just working with the army, apparently. He's, like, in a group with a bunch of army dudes in this whose names I don't know because they don't introduce anyone in this issue at all. Like, they don't even put, like, a little text box next to them to be like, this is the name of this character. This is who this character is. There's only one character whose name I got, which is a guy called Tink, who has, like, a metal mask, who works with Tim Drake. I don't know why Tim Drake is working with the army or with this squadron or whatever. Apparently, it's a running thing in his book at the moment. It's just, like, very confusing, you know, and I've read a little bit of Tim Drake stuff in the past, but this is nothing like the Tim Drake stuff that I've read. Like, basically all the characters that Chuck Dixon introduced for Tim were completely dropped by the title, like, from the title at this point, and Bill Willingham had just introduced a bunch of his own characters. There's also a moment in this where a character called Tarantula shows up, and I was praying for her death in this, and if you want to understand why, then it's best to go look up the character Tarantula from DC Comics, because I'd rather not talk about her, because she has a very controversial past, very controversial character, especially with her creator, Devin Grayson, being incredibly controversial as well. But she shows up, and she's unfortunately saved by another character with a bow and arrow, who also doesn't get introduced in this issue at all. They don't say her name. I don't know who it's supposed to be, but she's basically just like a Green Arrow kind of character. She's kind of a knockoff of, like, Speedy or whatever. Who really cares? She saves Tarantula, and then Tim Drake beats Johnny Warlock and hands him over to Ragman and Nightshade, who show up, and they're just going around grabbing magic users and throwing them in other dimensions to keep them away from, you know, to keep them out of harm, and to also make sure that they don't get up to any bad things. And then Tim is told that Bloodhaven has been hit pretty hard by the Omax, and that he's going to need to help them, you know, get better. Like, I guess in the next issue, Tim is going to go around and, you know, help people who have been hurt by the Omax attacking Bloodhaven. I don't even know why Tim Drake is in Bloodhaven. I don't know why this issue takes place in Bloodhaven. It feels more like a Nightwing issue starring Tim Drake than it does a Tim Drake issue, because we got more Nightwing characters. Like, we got just as many Nightwing characters in this as we do, like, Tim Drake characters. In fact, I'm surprised Nightwing doesn't even appear in this at all. Like, where is he? Is he busy dealing with other Omax in Bloodhaven? Is Tim Drake going to show up in the Nightwing issue? So the next Robin tie-in does what the last tie-in should have done. Issue 144, on the very first page, introduces us to all the characters that were in the last issue. I don't know why they didn't do this in issue 143, but they do it in this one. So the name of these army characters, like this little squadron that Tim Drake has teamed up with, are the Veteran, legendary American war hero, basically like a pastiche from Captain America, I guess. Captain Johnny Cloud, grandson of World War II loser. Lieutenant Ilsa von Hammer, granddaughter of Enemy Ace, who is a character, I guess. And Sergeant Tommy Tinker, the Clockwork Commando, who is the only character whose name I kind of knew because Tim Drake refers to him as Tink in the previous issue. I don't know anything else about the characters beyond their names now, but at least that's something. At least I can refer to them as their names now. Alongside them, we got Ragman and Blue Devil, two characters I do know, and they're going to team up with Tim, because Tim is currently going after a magic user called Dara Acquista. Dara Acquista, sorry, who also goes by the name Laura Fell. She's the sorceress warlock character who had teamed up with Johnny Warlock, so she's gone somewhere, and so now they need to track her down and find her so that they can stop her from causing havoc, because she is an incredibly dangerous magical being. And while they're doing this, they're also going to go around the city and help people who have been hurt by the Omax. So, like, the Veteran, finds a little girl who's trapped under a bunch of rubble and helps her get out of that, you know. Ragman and Tim Drake deal with some new kind of villain who doesn't have a name yet, but he's this guy that has like a centipede body. He's got just a really long body that he uses to twist around Ragman and Tim Drake, and apparently he stinks really bad. But they fight against him. There's also another villain that they also fight against. Blue Devil is here too. He's fighting this guy who has like energy punches. He also doesn't have a name. And yeah, they beat these two villains, take care of them, and then Tim Drake heads off in order to continue looking for Darla. Oh wait, apparently the villain's name is Tapeworm. Eventually they do mention his name. What a horrible name for a villain, and what a horrible concept for a villain in general is a guy that's like half tapeworm. Like, disgusting. So Tim Drake ends up questioning one of these villains, and from this they learn that all of these villains that are attacking Bloodhaven were freed by the Omax from their prison cells. The Omax came in and tried to like kill them, and in doing so freed all the villains, and so they escaped from the Omax, and so they've been trying to not get killed by the Omax, and at the same time they are supervillains, so they're also just attacking people too. Eventually, Blue Devil, Tim Drake, and Ragman do find Darla Rayquaza hiding on top of a building, and when they find her, a crap ton of villains show up, led by Tapeworm, because Tim Drake is holding this character called Thunderhand, which is the guy with the energy punches I mentioned earlier. They're holding him not hostage, but like they're holding him, and Tapeworm wants them to set him free, and he's brought a whole bunch of friends to make sure that they do. And so in the next issue, Tim Drake, Blue Devil, and Ragman are going to face this huge group of D-list supervillains, none of which I recognize. Pretty sure they were all created specifically for this one issue. Though one of them does look like Granny Goodness for some reason. I don't think it is her, but it looks like her. Alright, so I'm not going to really talk too deeply into Robin issue 145 because there's not really a whole lot of reason to. All that really happens in this issue is that Tim Drake teams up with Shadow Pact in order to fight the giant horde of supervillains that appeared in the last issue. What I want to do, though, is I want to kind of go through some of these villains because they're pretty damn stupid and I find it pretty funny. So let me just name off a couple of these villains that they end up fighting throughout the issue. We got Wicker Man. There's a villain called Badlands, who's a guy that's just made out of rock who causes earthquakes. We got another character called Diablo Azul, who has fire powers. And another villain that Blue Devil fights called Aquina, who is basically just a warrior, she's a centaur woman. We got classics like the Tattered Man, and the Quibbler. Another character who I guess is probably a little racist called the Great Wall because he's a big fat Chinese guy. So that's a bit weird. Then we got another character, or characters I should call them, because they're called the Jury, and it's basically just a bunch of guys who all look the same except they all have different numbers on their face. And I guess they judge people like a jury. There's another villain called the Curator, who probably has the most OP ability out of everyone in this. He can just turn people to stone. That's pretty messed up. But, Tim just beats him really easily. Just smashes his head into the ground. There's actually one character in this who I do recognize, who I don't, who wasn't introduced in this issue. It's Slipknot. Slipknot's in this issue. He's from, Suicide Squad. And that kind of makes me wonder, are these villains actually villains from past DC comics that are just so obscure that I never heard of them before? Because, Slipknot's a real guy who was in, other issues, so are these other guys in them too? This guy called Basket Case, is he a villain from past comics? Or the Tangler, who is another villain that appears in this very briefly. You know, we got another villain called Krakatoa who shows up. We've also got Cenotaph. Like, all these different random villains that just appear in this. Fright Knight is another guy that shows up, and he's literally just this guy who has like a cloak on, and he's like, I call myself Fright Knight because I can scare people. Wanna see? And then he's just like, boo. And then Ragman's just like, ah, like runs off. So apparently this guy just like scares people just by looking at him. There's another character in this that is called Crucible, and he's basically just like this holy dude who sets people on fire that he believes is like unholy. There's another character called Impervious who just seems to be like a really strong woman. Who else is in this? We got the Redback Spider, who is just a ripoff of Spider-Man, and also a ripoff of Black Spider, who is already a spider-themed villain. Like, why didn't they just use Black Spider? Why did they use Redback Spider? Or maybe... Wait, did Black Spider die? I think he died in, like, one of the... Maybe it was supposed to be Black Spider, but then he died in the Birds of Prey issue, so they couldn't use him anymore. There's a moment in this where Robin is taking down a couple of supervillains, and then this other supervillain called Monsoon shows up, who has the ability to control, like, water and tidal waves and stuff. And that's it. That's every single villain that appears in this. Like I said, just a bunch of random villains. I thought it'd be a bit fun if I went through them all and listed them all off. But something kind of important does happen at the very end. Wonder Girl shows up after all the supervillains have been beaten by Tim Drake and the Shadow Pact. She shows up and she's like, Robin, the Titans need your help. Like, it's dire. Like, it's really bad. Like, it's an emergency. And so I guess we're going to see Tim Drake show up in another issue of the Teen Titans where we get to see what that's all about. Overall, these 3 tie-in issues, like, the second one especially was kind of like very mid. Like, not really much was going on in it that really mattered if you weren't reading Robin. The first issue was great because that involved the Omax, and so we got to see like Tim Drake facing the Omax alongside Shadow Pact. The third issue was great too, because even though it doesn't tie heavily into Infinite Crisis, it was really fun just seeing all these random villains, and like, I get this need where I'm like, oh, I want to look up all these guys and see like if they were in other issues before this, like Slipknot, or if they were created for this. Like, did Bill Willingham just like go through the history of DC villains and be like, I'm gonna pick every single obscure villain that's ever existed and put them all in this issue? Because if that's the case, that's really fun, and I love the dedication. Instead of just creating a whole bunch of nameless characters, which I do think a lot of these characters are like were created for this, but there are some that are from older comics, like Slipknot. Alright, so the next thing we're reading is the Day of Vengeance special, which is going to tie up all of the loose ends left after the Day of Vengeance miniseries. So this ties up everything to do with the Spectre, because obviously that doesn't get tied up in the main Infinite Crisis book. It gets tied up in this. So if you read that miniseries but then didn't read this, you'd be like, what happened to the Spectre? And this answers all of that. So it's written by Bill Willingham with art by Justiniano, Walden Wong, Wayne Foucher, and Chris Chakay. So the Shadow Pact have come to the conclusion that they are going to stop the Spectre once and for all, and Nabu has a plan. At first his plan seems insane because he turns to the Shadow Pact and he says, like, we've seen what the future holds. Because, like, we see the Spectre, he goes and finds the Lords of Chaos, he kills them, and that takes away Hawk and Dove's powers, because they're powered by the Lords of Chaos. So now that the Spectre has killed the Lords of Chaos, if the Shadow Pact fight against him, it's guaranteed that they will lose. So Nabu's plan is to work with the Spectre, and when he says that, they're all like, what the hell? And he doesn't really explain their plan to them. Nabu just leaves, because Dr. Fate doesn't have a host at the moment, because like normally there would be like a normal human who would wear the Dr. Fate helmet and work with Nabu as Dr. Fate. But right now, he has no host, and so Dr. Fate is just Nabu himself. And so Naboo heads off to go and find the Spectre, while the rest of the Shadow Pact decide to deal with the Rock of Eternity situation. Because as we know, the Rock of Eternity was blown into smithereens, and pieces of it were sent all over the planet, including the Seven Deadly Sins and a bunch of other monsters and stuff. So the Shadow Pact are going to try and find the Seven Deadly Sins, recapture them, and also stop any monsters that have escaped from the Rock of Eternity. And so Phantom Stranger has a plan. He gets all of the magic characters to come together. And there's 30 different characters. And he sends most of them off to go and deal with, finding the pieces of the Rock Eternity. Finding, the escape monsters and stuff. But it turns out that they are just distractions. Because Phantom Stranger believes that if he sends out a bunch of, random characters and random magic characters, they'll get possessed by the Seven Deadly Sins, and that'll make it easier for the main Shadow Pact group, like Blue Devil and Detective Chimp and Shining Knight, to find the Seven Deadly Sins, because they'll possess these other heroes, and then they'll be able to go and fight them. So, yeah, it's kind of sad that these heroes are being used for fodder, or, as traps, but it's really the only thing they can do. There's no real other plan. So they set out to find all the Seven Deadly Sins, which they do. They find them one at a time. They fight them, Shining Knight fights one of them, Blue Devil fights another one. And meanwhile, Zatanna decides that she's going to rebuild the Rock of Eternity. And so she gets a bunch of the other heroes to help her find all the pieces of the Rock of Eternity so they can put it all together. While they're doing that, Naboo meets with the Spectre and tells the Spectre that he's going to help him. Because what the Spectre wants to do is he wants to kill Naboo. And so Naboo's like, I'm going to let you kill me, but you're going to have to work for it, and I'm going to try and convince you that what you're doing is wrong. And so Naboo tries to convince the Spectre to become a good guy again, but the Spectre just refuses and is trying to kill Naboo, and Naboo's just like, why aren't you powerful enough to kill me? You've been killing all of these, magic beings, supposedly absorbing their magic power, but where is it all going? Why aren't you getting any stronger? And this, pisses the Spectre off even more. And then Naboo starts to anger the Spectre even more by saying, Eclipso was clearly being manipulated by somebody else. And you were being manipulated by her. Which means you're probably being manipulated by outside forces as well. You're not in control of your own powers right now, Spectre. Whatever you're doing it for somebody else. What's going to happen when I die? Where's all my power going to go? It's probably not going to go to you. And this really upsets Spectre even more. The idea of being someone else's dog, their lapdog, really pisses Spectre off, because he believes that he's doing this of his own volition, but Naboo is trying to convince him that he is being used. This pisses Spectre off so much that he finally succeeds in killing Naboo. He just shoots him with a whole bunch of energy, and Naboo starts leaking red gas, which is supposed to be his blood. And so Naboo starts dying, but he succeeded because he wanted the Spectre to kill him. Because through killing Naboo, Spectre has finally done enough chaotic shit that the gods that are above him have finally decided to step in and teach the Spectre a lesson. Because Naboo says to him, he's like, I was working with the gods to try and make you the perfect host. But unfortunately, you killed me before we were able to succeed in doing that. So you're never going to get the perfect host. And instead, the upper gods are going to force you to get another host that you don't want. That is your punishment. And so they take the Spectre away and bring him to his new host, who we will actually find out who his new host is going to be in Infinite Crisis, but that's Spectre's punishment. He misses out on having the perfect host and instead has to put up with another human host, and let's just hope that this human host is actually good enough to be the Spectre. Because his last two hosts weren't so. Even though I find Hal Jordan to have been a pretty competent Spectre. If you've read his Spectre series, he was pretty good. But we've already seen what happened to Jim Corrigan. You know, he became like a serial killer. So let's hope that whoever is the next Spectre doesn't end up the same way. And then Naboo returns to the Shadow Pact, where he swiftly dies. And he says to the Shadow Pact, like, I'm dying, but the Helmet of Fate still has enough power in it to be passed on to somebody else. So they can still be Dr. Fate. They just won't be as powerful as Dr. Fate used to be, and I won't be there in order to guide them. And so he dies, and the helmet is given to Captain Marvel, and Captain Marvel heads off to go and find somebody worthy of becoming the new Dr. Fate. And so, yeah, everything in regards to Spectre is completely wrapped up. You know, the Spectre is stopped. He's going to gain a new host and no longer be on a chaotic rampage. Naboo has unfortunately died, which means the next Dr. Fate is going to not have any kind of guidance or anything, which is kind of interesting. The Rock of Eternity has been rebuilt. The 7 Deadly Sins have all been captured. Everything's pretty much good, you know? Unfortunately, Hawk and Dove have lost their powers because the Lords of Chaos have been destroyed. But according to Naboo, even though the sources of magic have all been destroyed, they will be reborn because of that. Like, once you destroy all sources of magic, it'll just get reborn anyway. So, new Lords of Chaos should be born eventually, and same with the other magic sources that the Spectre has killed. And so that's the end of Day of Vengeance. All that stuff finally tied up. Overall, probably the weakest storyline in Infinite Crisis. I don't really care much for like Spectre going on a rampage kind of story, but the ending was very satisfying. I'm glad that they tied up all of the loose ends, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with Dr. Fate in the future, and the Spectre as well. I'm looking forward to seeing who the new Spectre is going to be. Alright, so there are 2 issues of JSA Classified that are counted as tie-ins, even though they don't directly tie into Infinite Crisis very much. Nothing really important like happens in them. It's mainly just Jay Garrick teaming up with Ted Grant, Wildcat, to fight the Dragon King, who was an old villain of the Justice Society. And he's gained control of the Spear of Destiny, which allows him to pretty much do anything, control people's minds, stuff like that. So he controls Jay and Ted's minds to make them fight each other. Eventually they defeat Dragon King and they get the Spear of Destiny away from him. The important thing that happens is that when they get back to their like home base, reality starts warping around them because of what's going on during Infinite Crisis. And that's really everything that happens in it that's worth talking about. Alright, so there are a couple of issues of Batman that are considered to be tie-ins, issues 648 and 649. I'm not really going to talk about them because it's just under the hood, like that story, under the Red Hood. Red Hood fights Black Mask, and then he has the confrontation with the Joker that everybody knows about, where Batman stops him from killing the Joker. The big thing that happens in this that directly ties into Infinite Crisis is Batman sees the villain Chemo, who is a giant dude made out of toxic waste, get dropped on top of Bloodhaven, and he is essentially a nuclear bomb, so he blows up the entirety of Bloodhaven, and Batman watches from Gotham as Bloodhaven is completely obliterated, because it's not that far away. You can see the mushroom cloud, and Jason Todd's there, and he's basically just like, oh, like, isn't it kind of fitting that I came back to life and then Nightwing just frickin' died? Like, he just doesn't give a crap, and he's just like, he's kind of happy, honestly, because he doesn't like Nightwing at this point in time. He doesn't like Dick at all. And he's kind of soaking in, like, Batman's misery because he also hates Batman at this moment in time. But yeah, that's all that really happens that's worth talking about. Maybe I'll talk about Under the Red Hood in the future if I ever cover Batman comics. You know, if I were to do Under the Red Hood, it would probably be, you know, a part of like a Batman retrospective where I go through every issue of Batman like I did with The Flash. I don't know, that would take a very long time because there's just so many Batman issues. I feel like I'd have to start somewhere like in the 70s or something with Denny O'Neil, and not in the 40s. Alright, so the next thing we're going to be reading is Secret Files and Origins for Infinite Crisis, which is written by Marv Wolfman with art by Dan Jurgens and Jerry Ordway. Now, this is where we get a lot of backstory for everything that is currently going on with Superboy Prime and Alexander Luthor of Earth 3 and Superman and Lois of Earth 2. So they're stuck in what they believe, like, is supposed to be their heaven, but it's causing Superboy and Alexander to kind of snap and go a little bit insane, being stuck in this other dimension where they don't get to live the lives they think that they deserve. Like, Superboy Prime spends all of his time just watching good memories that he had on his old Earth, but then bad memories also play and continuously remind him about the death of his parents during the crisis and things like that. Meanwhile, Alexander never got to have a life. You know, when he was born, he pretty much immediately became adult, like, very fast. So he didn't get to know any parents, he didn't get to have any birthdays or anything. So what he wants is, he wants a new Earth that he can live a regular life on, that he has a history with, you know? He wants to create his own life where, you know, he's had birthdays and he has parents and things like that. And the only one of them that seems to be okay with not being home on their own Earth is Lois. Because Lois is slowly dying from being trapped in this other dimension. It's like sucking her of her power, and so she's turning old and frail and she's gonna die. And she's okay with that, but Superman of Earth 2 isn't okay with that, and he's willing to do anything if it means to saving her life, which is how he ends up folding into Alexander Luthor's plans to get rid of Earth 1 and create a new Earth. So it's revealed in this that the reason why so many things change so much on Earth, like Hal Jordan becoming evil, Superman dying and then coming back to life, Jason Todd coming back to life as Red Hood, the reasoning behind all that stuff is because Superboy Prime has been getting really frustrated to the point where he's began punching reality itself. And every time he punches reality, he changes it somehow. Like, he changes Earth 1's reality in some way. Bringing people back to life, killing people, changing people's entire identities, you know? And so he begins punching reality on purpose to try and bring his parents back to life. Because he's like, oh, if I can change reality by punching it, then I'm going to try and bring them back to life by punching it as well. And at the same time, he's also trying to get out of this other dimension. So he's punching reality in attempts to try and break through it. And he's getting weaker because there's no yellow sun in order to give him the power that he needs in order to break reality. But Alexander Luthor then reveals to Superboy Prime that he has been regaining his antimatter powers that he had recently lost after Crisis on Infinite Earths. And so he funnels these antimatter powers into Superboy Prime, which powers him up, and he kind of gains a bit of like a lust for power where he's like, oh, I'm so powerful, like, I can do anything, and he starts punching reality, and he just breaks straight through it, ending up on Earth 1 at a point before Blue Beetle has died. Like, he's not dead yet. He sees Superboy Prime, thinking that it's Superman, and he calls out to him, and Superboy Prime just ignores him. And Blue Beetle's just like, oh, yep, just ignoring me because nobody cares. Like, nobody ever cares. So I think this is, like, during Countdown on an Infinite Crisis when, like, Blue Beetle is trying to talk to different people about the situation that he's in, nobody's believing him. It's a little bit heartbreaking seeing him again, knowing what's going to happen. And so, yeah, Superboy Prime ends up on Earth 1, and he is determined to show Earth 1 his power and, make sure that Alexander Luthor's plan to get rid of Earth 1 and replace it with Earth 2 succeeds. One thing that really does push Superboy Prime over the edge and causes him to really want to prove himself and get his own Earth back is because he overhears Lois Lane saying that, like, Superboy Prime is never going to age while he's in this other dimension, which means he's never going to become Superman. And that really pisses Superboy Prime off, because there's nothing more he wants than to eventually be Superman, and knowing that he can't do that while stuck in this other reality really doesn't sit right with him. And so that leads directly into Infinite Crisis, issue 4, Homecoming. Alright, Infinite Crisis issue 4 begins with Chemo being dropped on top of Bloodhaven, which we had seen in the previous Batman issue. And then we cut to Power Girl, who has been kidnapped by Alexander Luthor and Superboy Prime and attached to their giant tower, which is going to be used to bring back Earth 2. And then eventually, I think their plan is to merge Earth 2 with Earth 1, so that it becomes a new Earth, but erase everyone from Earth 1 in the process. And Alexander Luthor reveals to Power Girl that he was behind literally everything, because, like, they made it to Earth long before the crisis happened. You know, Superboy Prime broke through reality like we saw in the Secret Origins. Apparently that took place a long time ago, like months ago. And since then, they were building up to this. You know, like, Alexander Luthor was manipulating the Society of Supervillains. He was manipulating Psycho Pirate. He was the one that gave Brother Eye sentient life. And Superboy Prime was responsible for the war between Ran and Thanagar and the other aliens, because what Superboy Prime did is he went around and he started moving planets around, which caused the war to happen, like by colliding them together and stuff. So they were responsible for everything. And, you know, Power Girl is like, Superman's not gonna, like, Earth 2 Superman is not going to agree to this. You know, once he finds out what you're doing, what you're planning, he's gonna fight you or stand against you. And Alexander Luthor is like, I'm going to deal with him when it comes to it, because I have come to the conclusion, like, I am okay with the idea of having to fight Superman, because it's just inevitable that a Lex Luthor and a Superman are going to be at opposite sides. You know, I've come to that understanding. And then he kisses Power Girl and knocks her out by kissing her. He probably didn't have to do it that way. He probably didn't have to harass her in that way in order to knock her out, but he decided to do it because he's problematic, I guess. And Superboy Prime is like, hey, Alex, you promised me that I could go talk to this guy, right? And Alex is like, yeah, you can go talk to him now. And Superboy Prime's like, awesome. And so he heads off to go and talk to someone that we will find out later, like who it is. So Nightwing sees Bloodhaven get destroyed, which, fun fact, Nightwing was originally supposed to die in Bloodhaven when it got blown up. At least that's what Dan DiDio wanted. But Jeff Johns fought against it and won. So, yeah, Dick Grayson didn't die like he was originally planned to. And so he and Batman are going to team up in order to let everyone know what's going on, because they know what's happening. They know that that Alexander Luthor is trying to erase Earth 1 and kill everyone, and so they're going to try and inform everyone what's going on and come up with some kind of plan to stop them. Earth 2 Superman is not sure about Alexander's plan. He's leaning more towards the right side, because there are people on Earth 1 who are good people. Like Dick Grayson is apparently a better person on Earth 1 than he was on Earth 2. You know, he was able to get out of the shadow of being Robin and become Nightwing, and apparently that's seen as a very positive thing, according to Earth 2 Superman. But Alexander Luthor manipulates him, saying, like, you just stay with Lois, you're not going to have to do anything, you don't need to get your hands dirty, I'll sort everything out. And before you know it, we'll be back on our Earth, and Lois will be healthy again. Superboy Prime heads to the Kent farm to confront Connor Kent, because he believes that he is the true Superboy. So he arrives and is basically just like, hey, it's me. I'm the true Superboy, and I am your replacement because you are a phony. And Superboy's just like, what the hell are you doing? You freak. Like, why are you coming here saying this shit to me? Like, I don't give a crap about who you are. You know, get away from me. Alright? Back off. And Superboy Prime's like, no, say it. Say that you're worthless and that I'm the true Superboy. Like, say what? That I can't believe you're wearing underwear that tight? I told you to back off. You just won't accept it, will you? You're not Superboy. And so Superboy Prime just like smashes straight into Connor and begins a fight with him. Meanwhile, in El Paso, Booster Gold has been tracking the location of the Beetle that, Blue Beetle originally owned, and it has tracked him to the house of it has brought him to the house of Jaime Reyes, who found the Beetle, and Skeets gives like a little scan of him and reveals that the Beetle has attached itself to Jaime's spine. And so Skeets just turns to Booster and is like, well, what are we going to do now? Like, time is of the essence. It's not like we can really take the Beetle from him now that it's in his spine. Superboy Prime and Superboy fight each other, and Krypto actually comes in and bites Superboy Prime on the shoulder, and Superboy Prime's like, what are you doing? You're not supposed to be attacking me. And he does the worst thing possible. He attacks Krypto. He just, like, throws Krypto into the ground and then kicks him in the face. He's like, bad dog. And, Connor's like, alright, that's it. And his eyes start, like, lighting up ablaze. And he's like, you kicked my dog, you mother. And so Superboy Prime and Connor continue fighting, and Superboy Prime is just way too powerful for Connor, so he very quickly overpowers him and grabs him by the neck. He's like, I don't know how you ever got away with it. You fooled everybody into believing you were actually Superboy. You don't even have a cape. He's like, Connor Kent's like, heh. And Prime's like, what? He's like, what are you smiling about? And Connor Kent reveals that he has his Titan's communication device in his hand. And Superboy Prime turns around to find all of the Titans, like every single Teen Titan that's ever existed, plus the JSA and the Doom Patrol, all behind him, ready to fight him. Like, Beast Boy brought the Doom Patrol, Kid Flash brought the Justice Society. Who is he? And then they all start attacking Superboy Prime. He's like, what are you doing? I'm not a bad guy. Get off of me. Get off of me. And he starts fighting against them. Meanwhile, Crispus Allen's dead body... Like, Crispus Allen was the partner of Renee Montoya, who was killed. He was shot dead. Is currently at police precinct being looked over. And all of a sudden, his dead body just wakes up because it is merging with the Spectre's force. Because the Spectre is being punished by the Lords of Chaos for killing, like, all the gods of magic. And his punishment is to be trapped inside Crispus's body. And Crispus gets to become the new Spectre. He's like, I was seduced. Food, forgive me, please, Lord, forgive me. As he's trapped inside Crispus's body. So Crispus Allen gets to become the new Spectre. Superboy Prime fights against the Titans, JSA, and Doom Patrol. There's a character called Panther who is an old member of the Titans who, like, is just like, you started this? He's just a stupid kid. And Superboy Prime's like, I'm not stupid, and just punches her head clean off. And then he looks at the blood on his hands. He's like, oh no, I didn't mean to do that. And then some of the Titans are just like, you'll burn for that. Like, get him, I'm with you, Terra. He's like, please, I said I didn't mean to. And he's like crying as there's blood all over his face. And so Superboy Prime just like attacks Wildebeest, punching him straight through the stomach. He's like, why are you making me? And then he just grabs another character called Risk and rips his arm off. Risk does survive this. He just is only got one arm now. I think he ends up getting a robot arm. But yeah, he rips Risk's arm straight off. He's just like, you're ruining everything. You're ruining me. You're making me like you. And he just like keeps killing more characters, more obscure characters. It's like, we got him, guys. And that's when Bart Allen, Wally West, and Jay Garrick all run in and grab Superboy Prime. He's like, stop it. Let me go. He's like, Wally, my tendons are tearing. I'm not going to be fast enough for this. We just needed help with the running start, Jay. I'm sorry, son. And so, like, Jay just, like, lets go of Superboy Prime because he's like, I'm not fast enough. And so Wally and Bart keep carrying Superboy Prime. And Prime's like, what are you doing? It's like, the Speed Force. We gotta keep moving, Bart. We gotta get this psycho away from everyone. But why did he do that? Who is he? Don't stop running, Bart. Don't stop. And Bart's just like, Flash? And Wally starts, like, melting or like molding with reality or something. It's not really explained what happens to him, but Wally starts like becoming unstable, and he sees Linda, and he's like, Linda, like, you've always been my tether to reality and everything. Like, you're the love of my life, but unfortunately, I'm making a decision right now to just run out of reality itself in an attempt to get rid of this Superboy Prime guy. Or, I ran so fast that now I'm being erased from the reality or something. So I'm probably never going to see you again. And Linda's just like, look, I don't know where you're going, but wherever you're going, your family's coming with you. And so she kisses Wally, and Wally, Linda, and their 2 baby twins get struck by a huge amount of lightning, and they just disappear completely. And so Bart's just like, Wally, where are you going? I can't do this alone. And Prime's like, you're right. You're even weaker than the rest. You've always been stupid. I watched you, stupid little kid. Left all alone. And Bart's just like, shut up, and punches him in the face. He's like, I'm not stupid. And then a hand reaches out and is like, Bart. And the hand reaches out of the Speed Force and grabs Superboy Prime. And it's Barry Allen. He's like, you're not alone either, Grandpa. And then Max Mercury and Johnny Quick, who are also both in the Speed Force, also come out, and they all grab Superboy Prime. It's like, let's help the kid out. You got it. Max, no, don't do this to me. While he's waiting for you, Bart. Don't be afraid. I'm not, Max. Let's go. And Superboy Prime's like, they made me do it. You can't get rid of me. When I grow up, I'm gonna be Superman. Don't any of you understand? I'm gonna be Superman. And he just gets like pulled into the Speed Force by Bart, Max, Barry, and Johnny Quick. And then the Speed Force just explodes, and all of them just perish with it. And Jay even confirms he meets up with Ted Grant, because Jay is the only Flash left at this moment. He meets up with Ted Grant, and Ted's like, Jay, are you okay? And Jay's like, the Speed Force, Ted. It's gone. So the Speed Force has been completely destroyed, and Wally, Bart, Max, Barry, and Johnny have seemingly been destroyed with it. So Alexander Luthor decides that he is finally going to power up his tower using the help of Black Adam, who they have kidnapped and, attached to the tower. They force Black Adam to say the word Shazam, which powers up the tower. Meanwhile, in space, Firestorm's, Joe Rush's partner, his best friend Mick, who he is currently fused with to become Firestorm, dies while they're out in space trying to fix reality alongside Donna Troy and Supergirl and stuff. But Martin Stein, who is also Firestorm, another Firestorm, grabs Joe and is like, your friend has died, but Firestorm will finally be whole again. And so he fuses with Joe Rush to become the definitive Firestorm. And then we see Alexander Luthor as the tower powers up. He's like, at last, it will be undone. It will be undone. And then reality just starts being torn apart. And Alexander Luthor himself comes through reality using the tower, creates a avatar of himself that is able to create and bring back Earth 2. So Earth 2 comes back, and everyone from Earth 2 transports from Earth 1 to Earth 2. So the Titans and stuff notice that Jay Garrick and Ted Grant and all the JSA are all disappearing, and it's because they've been taken to Earth 2. And so now Earth 1 and Earth 2 exist at the same time. And Superman from Earth 2 looks around and he's like, we're here, Lois. We're home. And he looks up at the Daily Star, which is Earth 2's version of the Daily Planet. And so, yeah, Earth 2 now exists alongside Earth 1. And Alexander Luthor's next plan is to get rid of Earth 1 so that there can only be one, because both Earths can't exist at the same time, according to him. And that's everything that happens in Infinite Crisis issue 4. A pretty huge issue. So much stuff happens. So much death and destruction and huge plot details really moving forward in this. Yeah, we're really getting going with this issue with the with Earth 2 being brought back and yeah, everyone from Earth 2 being taken back home. So I'm excited to see what happens in issue 5. But before we get to issue 5, we got a whole load of tie-ins that we got to get through. So the next tie-in I'm going to be talking about for a little bit is Nightwing issue 116, written by Devin Grayson with art by Marco Mars, Wellington Alves, and yeah, so this issue basically just continues on from where Bloodhaven is at the moment, because Kimmo was dropped on top of it, which destroyed a lot of it. And so Nightwing is determined to go in and help as many people as he can. But Superman actually grabs him and pulls him away. And there's a great moment between Nightwing and Superman where Dick is like, I promised Batman that I would make this city better. I'm its protector. This is my home. I want to do everything I can to protect it. And Superman's just like, you will die if you go in there, Dick, because of, like, Kimmo's core is still in there, and I'm the only one who can really deal with that. Like, you are going to die. And he drops Dick off and kind of lets Dick make his own decisions for himself. And Dick's like, I'm gonna die? Cool. Sounds good. And he just heads into Bloodhaven anyway. And so the rest of the issue follows him, like, helping people. Like, he saves a little kid and gives him back to her mum. And then he goes and finds this young woman and takes her back to this character called Amy, who's... I don't know who she is because I don't read Nightwing. I have started reading Nightwing. I've started reading the Chuck Dixon run, but Amy is not a character yet, so I have no idea who she is. But yeah, he saves this woman and hands her over to this Amy, and then as he's like leaving a nearby building while trying to save people, it collapses on top of him, and so Nightwing is like kind of barely alive, and he looks up and he sees Batman coming towards him. And he's just like, oh, like, you know, please forgive me. Like, don't be mad at me for, like, failing. And so we might see what happens next. I don't know if we will or not, because I don't know if it's listed as a tie-in, but who knows? Maybe we'll see what happens to Nightwing. And if we don't, then go and read Nightwing if you want to find out what happens after this. Though I would highly recommend that you just start at issue 1 of Nightwing and not at issue 116. There is a Teen Titans issue that is a tie-in to this, that's issue 32, but I'm not going to talk about it because it's just a director's cut edition of the fight between Superboy and the Teen Titans and the JSA and the Doom Patrol, except it's less interesting because we don't have any of the deaths shown in it, and we don't get any of, like, the Wally, Jay, and Bart thing, you know, pushing Superboy Prime into the Speed Force and then blowing up the Speed Force. Like, we get none of that, so it's not really an issue worth reading unless you're reading Teen Titans already, and it's definitely worth skipping if you're just reading all the tie-ins to Infinite Crisis, because it's not bringing anything new to the table. Alright, Wonder Woman issue 225, written by Greg Rucka with art by Cliff Richards. So there isn't a ton of stuff that happens in this that's, like, super, like, important to Infinite Crisis, but there is some things that do happen in this that are important to Wonder Woman and will lead directly into her role in future Infinite Crisis issues and events in general. Wonder Woman decides to close down the Themysciran embassy entirely because of the problems that are currently going on and the way that Earth views the Themyscirans. But there are a lot of humans that are on her side, rallying and, you know, supporting her. And she also has, like, a whole bunch of people that worked with her at the embassy that want to continue following her and help her, because Wonder Woman's going to go off and help in the crisis, help her friends, even though they don't call her a friend anymore. She's kind of hated by everyone. She's still going to go and help them. And her friends at the embassy want to help her too, but she says, no, like, you're not going to help me in the crisis. I got to do that myself. But what I want you to do is I want you to continue our work. Like, even though we are shutting down the embassy, it doesn't mean that we're stopping what we're doing. Like, we're not going to stop representing Themyscira. We're not going to stop trying to change people's opinions and minds about what's happened and their views on Themyscira. Like, we're not going to stop doing that. I just need you to keep doing that without me. And then she goes to, like, the crowd of people and she's like, and that's the same with all of you. Like, you want to support me, and the best way to support me is to continue fighting for me and, my people using your words, and I will never stop protecting you. Like, even though I'm not going to be here in person, I'm going to be out there somewhere, I am protecting Earth, and I am protecting all of you. Like, I'm doing it for you. And so she leaves and heads off to go and deal with the crisis, while all of her supporters remain behind in order to help fight for her ideals and the name of Themyscira. And so it's a very nice issue, dealing with the effects of the crisis that they have had on Wonder Woman and the manipulations of Maxwell Lord and Alexander Luthor. And I'm excited to see where this takes Wonder Woman later. There's a couple of issues of Robin that do tie into this, issues 146 and 147, but nothing really important happens in them other than Connor Kent is in a really bad condition after the fight with Superboy Prime, where he is literally dying, and so Tim Drake and some of the Titans like Beast Boy and Speedy and Wonder Girl have to go to Cadmus Labs in order to get like a solution that they can give to Connor in order to help him. And so they go to Cadmus Labs, they fight like a Brainiac clone and a couple of other messed up mutants while they're in Cadmus. They find the serums that they need, they take them back to Connor, they put him in a test tube, and Connor ends up okay. And it turns out the person that gave Tim the information he needed to go to Cadmus Labs and help Connor was Lex Luthor, because Connor is technically his son, and so he wanted to make sure that his son was okay. And that's basically just everything that happens in the Robin tie-ins that's worth talking about. Connor's okay now. There's also a couple more Firestorm tie-ins, issues 21 and 22, but again, nothing super important happens in them. The only thing that really happens in them is that Jason Rush's body is apparently destroyed. Like, it was destroyed in the last issue of Infinite Crisis, so, like, he has no Firestorm body or anything. But he crosses paths with, like, the essence of Martin Stein, or what's left of Martin Stein's body, and they communicate with each other, and Jason Rush agrees to join with Martin Stein and create a new Firestorm body, but that, like, the consequences that Jason Rush is going to have to put up with Martin Stein, and Martin's like, Ronnie and I didn't always get along, and that might be the case with us too, but if you're okay with that, then I'm happy to help create us a new body. And so Jason agrees, and he and Martin create a new Firestorm body and become the brand new Firestorm. We don't actually get to see what the new Firestorm looks like, but the issues end with Jason and Martin Stein combining together and becoming the new Firestorm, which is exciting, especially because Jason needs to get his Firestorm powers back as soon as possible so he can go and help Donna Troy during the crisis. Okay, so now we are going to be talking about the Rand Thanagar special for Infinite Crisis. This officially ends the Rand Thanagar War. Like, this is the ending to that whole storyline. So basically, Rand and Thanagar are still fighting in the middle of space, and also there is a huge rip in space and time, so Donna Troy and her crew are there trying to stop that, while Adam Strange and Hawkman are there to also try and stop the war, and Kyle Rayner and Kilowog are also there in order to stop the war, and also try to stop the rip in space and time. And Kilowog finds out that there are Thanagarians heading off to Thanagar, so he decides to go and chase after them in order to see what they're doing on Thanagar. So he heads off with Alan Scott, the Green Lantern, and Captain Comet, and they head to Thanagar, and they find out that the Thanagarians are just there to create a new Thanagar. Like, they're not there to do anything bad, they just want to regrow their planet and, be good people. Something really important that happens in this is they discover the truth about how Ran ended up teleporting into Thanagar's atmosphere, destroying it, which is what caused the war in the first place. Originally, it was believed that it was the Ranians' fault, that a Ranian was responsible for doing it, but it turns out that Rand didn't teleport into Thanagar's atmosphere. It was pushed into Thanagar's atmosphere. Because as we learnt in one of the previous issues of Infinite Crisis, Superboy was moving planets around to cause wars. And one of the planets he moved was Ran. He moved it into Thanagar's atmosphere, which destroyed Thanagar. So they find footage of Superboy Prime doing this using a Thanagarian satellite that caught it on camera. They see the footage, and so now they have proof that Rand didn't do it, and because Rand didn't do it, that's going to just stop the war, because the Thanagarians won't blame them anymore. So they just need to get this proof to the Thanagarian Council. And at the same time, they find even more proof on the remains of Rand. Like, when they go there, they find 2 handprints, which are Superboy Prime's handprints, and they scan them, and it proves that it's Superboy Prime. So they have all the proof they need to, to prove that Ran is innocent. And so they bring the evidence to the council, and the war between Ran and Thanagar completely stops. And you would think that this means that everything's all good, right? But there's still one major problem, which is Alexander Luthor ripping reality apart in an attempt to create Earth 2, which we know he succeeds in doing. Kyle Rayner and Jade try to stop these giant hands that are coming out of this rift. And in the process, Jade is hit by a massive surge of energy that completely destroys her. Like, she just her physical body dies, and she tells Kyle, she's like, my physical body is dying, but my spiritual form, or like the energy within me, isn't dying, and is instead going to be passed on to you, because that's truly where it belongs, because the reason why I have my powers back is because you gave them back to me. And so now my energy is going back to where it belongs, which is within you. So Alan Scott comes back from Thanagar, where he sees his daughter is dying, and Jay's just like, it's okay, Dad, like, this is meant to happen, this is how it should be. And then she just gets vaporized, like, she just falls apart into dust, and all of her green energy is absorbed by Kyle, and Kyle transforms into Ion. So Ion is an identity that Kyle has used in the past already. It's when he gains enough power that he literally becomes a god, and that has happened again. Previously, he gave up those powers because he didn't like being a god. It's happened again. By absorbing Jade's power, he has become Ion again, and as Ion, he decides to lead Alan Scott, Hawkman, Adam Strange, Captain Comet, like everyone, Starfire, like he's leading them all into battle against Alexander Luthor, because that's all they have left to do now. Now that the Ranthanagar War has stopped, they can now put all of their energy into helping stop the crisis and stop the man responsible for all of this, which is Alexander Luthor. And so we'll find out how their efforts go in future issues of Infinite Crisis. This one was a bit of an emotional one to read because, I've read a lot of Kyle Rayner's stuff, like pretty much everything. Like, I read the entire run where Kyle Rayner was the main Green Lantern. I've read it all, and so I've read, Jade's introduction into that series, her ending up in a relationship with Kyle, her losing her abilities, regaining her abilities. So, like, it's been one big roller coaster ride, and it's ended, unfortunately, with Jade's death. I'm sure she'll be back in the future, but for now, Jade is dead, and it's a little bit emotional to see her pass away. And they definitely focused a lot more on Kyle and Jade's relationship in this. Donna Troy is here as well, and Kyle and Donna did date in the past, but they don't really focus on that in this. And in fact, she's actually kind of got quite a cold shoulder towards Kyle, which isn't fun to read. I don't like it when they do that, when they're just like, oh, there's bad blood between her and Kyle. There isn't really. They kind of try to make Kyle look like an ass, and, yeah, I don't know. Not really a fan of that. So after reading that Ranthanagar War special, I was expecting to be going into more tie-ins and being able to get to talk about more tie-ins. But unfortunately, and I'm not kidding, the next 8 tie-ins are, just not worth talking about at all. Nothing happens in them that is even important. is even related to Infinite Crisis in any way. The only thing in common they have with Infinite Crisis is that they just happen to take place at the same time. I don't even know why they're listed as tie-ins in this. There's like 4 issues of Manhunter, which is a series that has nothing to do with Infinite Crisis, yet it's listed here in the tie-ins list. There's even an issue of Wonder Woman, which also has nothing to do with Infinite Crisis. It's just showing us flashbacks of Wonder Woman and Superman's relationship up to Infinite Crisis, which is cool and all, but like it's not anything that we don't already know. You know, yes, they were great friends before Infinite Crisis. Then she killed Maxwell Lord, and now they're not friends anymore. Like, why are we going through this again? Like, there's not really anything that I can talk about. You know, I'm not gonna be sitting here talking about, you know, all these different things from like Wonder Woman's comics, like how, you know, when she stopped being Wonder Woman and Artemis took over as Wonder Woman, like stuff like that. No, instead we're going to be moving straight on to Infinite Crisis issue 5. Oh, there is one thing though that I do want to talk about. In the Nightwing tie-in, issue 117, a big moment happens in Nightwing's life where after all of the crap that has happened to him, he finally decides that he is ready to commit to a relationship with Barbara Gordon. Not just a regular relationship, he's ready to commit full on because he pulls out a ring and he proposes to her, which is a pretty huge moment. A lot of people don't even know that like Barbara and Dick have been engaged and gotten married. Like, they do get married. It's not like the Batman and Catwoman situation where they got engaged and the marriage never happened. No, the wedding between Nightwing and Oracle did happen, and then it was like undone and stuff, and yeah. So let's move on to Infinite Crisis issue 5. Alright, Infinite Crisis issue 5 begins with a cape ceremony, as they refer it to, which is where a lot of the superheroes, especially the religious ones, get together and just pray for the coming battle. And, you know, those that they've lost and stuff. Like, it's led by Zuriel, who is a literal angel, and he, yeah, basically just gives a ceremony and a huge speech. And, Mr. Terrific and Ragman are there, and they have a bit of a conversation where Mr. Terrific mentions that he's an atheist while Ragman is Jewish. And Ragman is like, how can you be an atheist when, like, magic exists and, you know, my cape is made out of souls and stuff? And Terrific just continues to come up with excuses to make these things make sense with, like, science and stuff. And Ragman's like, man, I wish do you just not have faith in anything, you know? And Mr. Terrific is like, I have faith in my team. And Ragman's like, well, I wish I had faith in mine. Earth 2 has now been recreated and is currently coexisting with Earth 1, and alongside that, a lot of the JSA have been transported to Earth 2. There are some other characters that have been sent there as well, including the Superman from Earth 2, who is finally reunited with Lois Lane of Earth 2 on that Earth, and she seems to be okay at first, and, you know, Earth 2 Superman is, like, super excited to just start their new life on their Earth. Meanwhile, Booster Gold takes Jaime Reyes to the Batcave in order to tell Batman that he's found the new Blue Beetle. When they go in there, they're seen as intruders. And so, like, they get caught by Batman. And so when Batman shows up, he's like, what are you doing here? Like, who's this kid? Booster's like, this is Blue Beetle. And, like, he, cuts, like, a nearby rope using one of his, like, blasters, like his Booster Gold powers. And, it causes Jaime to fall onto a rock, which, causes the Scarab to start, like, activating, and it transforms Jaime into Blue Beetle for the first time. So it's the very first time that we see Jaime Reyes in his iconic Blue Beetle suit. And so Booster basically says to Batman, we're planning to, like, all of us heroes, like, we're planning to attack Brother Eye at the same time. And Batman's like, but we can't see Brother Eye, like, he's cloaked at the moment. And Booster's like, that's why we need this new Blue Beetle, because, like, he can see Brother Eye. Like, his powers allow him to see it. Meanwhile, Lex Luthor goes and visits Connor Kent, Superboy, who is currently in a test tube, and he gives Superboy a like little crystal, and inside the crystal is visions of Alexander Luthor's location, as well as the giant tower that he's been using to bring back Earths. It's the one that he used to bring back Earth 2. Things don't end too well for Earth 2 Superman because Lois Lane from Earth 2 very quickly dies. Like, she just dies because Earth 2 Superman believed that if he recreated their Earth and got them home, that she would be okay. But it turns out that his efforts were for nothing, and she dies anyway. And that leaves Earth 2 Superman incredibly distraught, and he just, like, holds her dead body and starts screaming out. And it's like a recreation of when Supergirl died in the original Crisis on Infinite Earths, and, like, Superman was holding her in his arms. It's, like, recreated that, but with Earth 2 Superman and Earth 2 Lois Lane. And Earth 1 Superman hears Earth 2 Superman crying and flies off to go find the source of it. Because he doesn't know it's Superman. He just knows that somebody's crying over Lois Lane. So he heads off. And Wonder Woman decides to go and help people because they're, like, looting and stuff. But everyone turns against her because they think that she's a murderer and all that. So they start, like, attacking her. So she has to get away from these people. And when she does, she bumps into Earth 2 Wonder Woman, who is apparently still alive. She's just really old now. And so Earth 2 Wonder Woman explains to Earth 1 Wonder Woman that Diana is gonna need to go and help Superman because Superman is currently in trouble and needs her now more than anything. And Diana's just like, but he doesn't need me because, like, he doesn't like me anymore. Like, he doesn't want me to help him. And Earth 2 Wonder Woman is like, he might not want you to, but he needs you to. And so she manages to convince Diana to get more in touch with her human side, because, like, for a long time now, Diana has been focusing more on her Themysciran side, and it's about time she focused, like, she got to be human for once and follow her human feelings, which is to help her friend. And so she decides to do that. Superman finds Earth 2 Superman holding Lois Lane, and Earth 2 Superman blames Superman for her death. He's like, this is your fault. You're the reason for all of this. If you didn't exist, then this never would have happened. And so he grabs a nearby car and recreates the cover of Action Comics issue 1, where he grabs the big green, like, he grabs, like, the green Volkswagen and attacks Superman with it. And just keeps attacking him with it. He's like, Lois was the only one of us who still believed in you. But you took her. You took her from me. And, meanwhile, Alexander Luthor doesn't really care that Lois Lane of Earth 2 has died. And we also learned that his plan isn't just to bring back Earth 2. It's actually to bring back all the Earths within the multiverse. Because Alexander Luthor wants to sift through every single Earth that ever exists to find the perfect one. Like, that's his goal. So, Superman keeps getting beaten up by Earth 2 Superman. He's like, I won't let you hurt anyone else. There's no one else here. This city is empty. Because of you. This is all because of... And then Diana comes in and, like, wraps the lasso of truth around him and is like, stop. You're here too? Get this off of me. I want us to talk. I want the truth. I don't need your magic lasso to tell the truth. It's what people from my Earth do. And so Earth 2 Superman basically explains everything that he believes is the truth. He's like, and the truth is that your Justice League lobotomized their adversaries. Your Batman built a satellite spawning an army that killed dozens. Your Wonder Woman murdered Maxwell Lord. And worst of all, you, Superman, could have stopped this before it started. You should have. You should have led them to a better tomorrow. Instead, when the universe needed its greatest heroes, they refused to stand together. You had the opportunity to make that Earth into the perfect world it had the potential to be, and you wasted it. That's why I had to come here. That's why my Lois died. And to bring back your perfect Earth? And then Superman says the best line in, like, one of the best lines in this entire event. He turns to Earth 2 Superman and he says, if you're from this Earth, it can't be perfect. Because a perfect Earth doesn't need a Superman. And that just changes Earth 2 Superman's entire view on this whole situation. He's like, the perfect Earth, it's my God. It's not mine. It never was. And so suddenly after Superman just heads off, he's like, where's he going? And meanwhile, Psycho Pirate is asking Alexander Luthor about like all these different characters, like, who's this guy? And Alexander Luthor is like, oh, that's Captain Atom from Earth 8. That's the planet that, like, that's the Earth that, like, Kyle Rayner and Helena Bertinelli and Jason Rush were supposed to be born on, but they ended up being on Earth 1. And so Earth 2 Superman puts 2 and 2 together. He goes and finds Lois Lane's dead body, and he's like, a perfect world doesn't need a Superman. And Alexander Luthor, meanwhile, explains that the reason why he hasn't killed Earth 2 Superman is because he needs him alive. And Earth 2 Superman is like, Alex. And so he's kind of figured out that Alexander Luthor, like, kind of the reasoning behind a lot of his choices, because Alexander Luthor reveals that Superman is the center of the universe itself, and he needs to use Superman in order to recreate the multiverse, essentially. So, using Superman as like a catalyst, he turns on his tower, like he activates it, and so Earth 2 Superman, like, or Earth 1 Superman, sorry, just starts, like, puts his hands against his head and it's just like, ah, as he, like, splits apart into, like, multiple Supermen, and then the Earth just splits apart. Yeah, because apparently Superman is the focus of the universe, so, yeah, like, by turning on the tower, he splits apart into all of these different Supermen, and in doing so, you know, the Earths split apart into the infinite Earths that were originally erased. So, in Crisis on Infinite Earths, all of the the entire multiverse was completely erased from existence. Now it's back. Like, Alexander Luthor has recreated the multiverse in order to find one Earth that will be the perfect Earth for him to live on. Which, I imagine to him, the perfect Earth is one that doesn't have Superman. Because Superman himself said, you know, for an Earth to be perfect, it shouldn't have a Superman. And I think Alexander Luthor believes that too. And so that's what he's looking for. Because in the end, all a Luthor really cares about is Superman not existing, regardless of what Earth they come from. Like, even on Earth 3, Lex Luthor's goal was to get rid of Ultraman, who was the Superman of Earth 3, because Ultraman was evil. So, like, they were always destined to fight each other, and Lex Luthor is always destined to want to get rid of whatever kind of Superman is on his Earth. So, Nightwing calls everyone to come to Titan's Tower because there's going to be a final confrontation. He's like, this is it, like, we're getting ready for it. And then all of a sudden, a massive earthquake happens, and he sees all these Earths just suddenly appear in the sky above him. And so Connor shows up, and he's like, what the hell is going on? And Nightwing's like, yeah, have you seen all these Earths that are just showing up? Like, something's happened, and we gotta get to the bottom of it and stop it. And Connor's like, well, I know how we're going to be able to do that, because, like, I know who's behind this, and also I know where they are, and he, like, shows Nightwing, like, the little jewel that shows them the location of, like, Alexander Luthor's location. So now Nightwing and Superboy know where Alexander Luthor is, so they can now go and try and stop him. Meanwhile, a Flash arrives in the present. I don't know which one it's supposed to be. Either it's Wally West and the artist mistakenly drew him in Barry Allen's costume, or it's supposed to be Barry Allen. They don't say which Flash it's supposed to be, but he shows up in order to see Dr. Light, and he goes up to Dr. Light. This is the Kamio Hoshi version, who is a superhero. Goes up to Dr. Light, and he's basically like, you have to tell them, warn them. She's like, what are you talking about? Listen to me. We couldn't hold him. He's escaped. He's coming. Who? Him. And he, like, points, and Superboy Prime has escaped from the Speed Force and his back, and he is rocking a brand new costume. And so things are looking a little bit dire now, because as we know, Superboy Prime went insane in the last issue, and they had to lock him away in the Speed Force, and now he's back to probably cause more problems. And so, yeah, that's the end of that issue. And so now we're going to be moving on to a couple of more tie-ins. We got about, I think, 3 more tie-ins before we make it into the final issues of the event. Alright, so there are a couple of issues of Action Comics that are said to be tie-ins, but I read through them and they're just not really worth talking about. It just kind of goes through the history of Superman. There's a lot about, like, when Superman fought Doomsday during Death of Superman and died and all that kind of stuff. It just doesn't really tie into Infinite Crisis. What does tie into Infinite Crisis is Teen Titans issue 33, which involves what Nightwing and Superboy are doing after they noticed that there were a bunch of Earths up in the sky above them. And so they go to check out these Earths. Nightwing puts on, like, his old 90s costume because it has a glider, so he's able to, like, fly into the sky. They head up to these Earths to take a look at them, and one of them just explodes. Superboy's like, what the hell? That planet just blew up. And Nightwing's like, yeah, they look pretty, but they are pretty unstable. And that could happen to our planet if we don't do something now. And all these other Earths being everywhere is causing Earth 1 to become unstable. So there's, like, earthquakes going on and tsunamis and things. And so Nightwing and Superboy go around to help people. But an explosion happens which knocks Nightwing into icy waters. And so Superboy has to save him. In doing so, it destroys Nightwing's 90s costume. And he ends up putting on his current costume again. And Superboy explains to Nightwing that the Titans had seen a version of themselves in the future where they had all become evil, and, like, Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman were all dead, and Nightwing was gone for some reason, and Connor believes that this is the catalyst for that future. So if they don't stop this crisis, that future will come true. Because right now the Titans are all scattered, and in that alternate future, they were all separated as well, and that's what led to them becoming evil. And Nightwing's like, well, the future isn't set in stone, so what we can do is we can do our best to try and prevent it from happening. Meanwhile, there is a part of this where Cassie Sandsmark, aka Wonder Girl, she recently discovered that Zeus is her father, and so Ares is her brother. And so Ares appears to her, and Cassie is like, why am I losing my powers? And Ares is like, because the gods are leaving this planet. But I can give you the power that you're looking for. All I want you to do is to allow me to become your brother, because that's all I want, is I want family. And she agrees to that. And so the crystal that Connor has that will lead him and Nightwing to Alexander Luthor's location continues to glow. So Superboy's like, wow, it's glowing again, let's go. And so Nightwing and Superboy follow the crystal's path, and they actually make it to Alexander Luthor's tower that he's using to create these Earths. And so Nightwing turns to Superboy and he's like, I think I see the guys behind this. You ready to do this? Superboy's like, hell yeah. And so that leads directly into Infinite Crisis issue 6. Alright, Infinite Crisis issue 6. So Batman has a group of superheroes that include Green Arrow, a couple of Green Lanterns, you got Blue Beetle, Booster Gold, Metamorpho, Mr. Terrific, Black Lightning, and they're all going to find Brother Eye in order to stop Brother Eye once and for all. There's a little bit of a mention that the Green Lantern rings are reacting to Blue Beetle in a way that is alarming. It seems the rings are somewhat afraid of Blue Beetle for some reason. So Brother Eye then appears in front of Batman's group with hundreds of Omacs and essentially says, like, this is futile, my Omacs are going to destroy you all. I'm only here to do what you want me to do, which is to create, like, a perfect world, and in order to do that, I need to get rid of all the metahumans. Meanwhile, Superman and Earth 2 Superman team up together with the help of Wonder Woman, because Earth 2 Superman has finally realized that Earth 1 might not be perfect, but it is a better world than Earth 2. Because Earth 2 Superman is like, why do you believe in this world so much when it's not perfect? And Earth 1 Superman is like, because they believe in us. And so Earth 2 Superman's like, alright, we need to get back to Earth 1 because that's where Alexander Luthor is. We need to stop him. And Wonder Woman's like, alright, so which Earth is Earth 1? Because there's like hundreds of Earths at the moment. Meanwhile, Alexander Luthor is just grabbing Earths and literally smashing them together, fusing them together in an attempt to create the perfect Earth. And he keeps failing, because every time he smashes Earths together, he accidentally destroys them. Or creates a really terrible Earth. Psycho Pirate is getting a little antsy, because like he wants Alexander Luthor to like get it over and done with and create the perfect Earth, because he just wants to like have his way with Power Girl, which is pretty horrifying that he's talking this way about her. He's like obsessed with her. He's like, why don't you use Earth 2 as a as one of the Earths that you're gonna fuse together? And Alexander is like, because I don't feel like it, or I don't see Earth 2 as like a good enough Earth to create the perfect Earth. Meanwhile, a bunch of the magic characters gather together in order to summon the Spectre so that he can help them during the crisis. And just like most other events, they summon the Spectre and he doesn't help them at all. They summon Crispus Allen, he turns into the Spectre, and instead of helping them, because Phantom Stranger comes up to him and is like, hey, we need your help to stop this, the Spectre just ignores him, looks at Star Sapphire, and then blows her up because she's evil. And he's the spirit of vengeance. He just turns to her and he's like, as Star Sapphire, you have terrorized and enslaved men across the universe. You decapitated and slaughtered those who did not bow down before you. Your hatred for men has resulted in the torturous deaths of hundreds. Vengeance must be had. And he just blows her up. And then there's a character called Faust. He like from the beginning he was like, this is a bad idea. Why are we summoning the Spectre? And after Star Sapphire gets blown up and the Spectre just leaves, it's like, I told you. So Wonder Girl meets up with Nightwing and Superboy because they have found Alexander Luthor's tower and they're going to go in and try and stop him. And so, yeah, a fight breaks out between Alexander Luthor and Superboy and Nightwing, which he is quite powerful, so you would think, like, oh, Superboy would be able to easily beat Alexander Luthor, but that's not the case. Also, they're not there to defeat Alexander Luthor. They're just, like, their main goal is to just destroy the tower, because as long as they do that, it will probably save everyone and stop the crisis. So, Batman and Mr. Terrific and Black Lightning all head into Brother Eye while everyone else distracts Brother Eye from the outside. Batman's goal is to go into the center of Brother Eye and mess around with Brother Eye's brain. But this is mainly just a distraction. Like, he's trying to trick Brother Eye into thinking that he is there to shut him down, when in reality, Mr. Terrific is inside Brother Eye as well, and Brother Eye doesn't know that because one of Mr. Terrific's powers is that he is invisible to technology. So while Batman is distracting Brother Eye, Mr. Terrific hacks into his systems and changes his, sends him out of orbit of Earth. And so Brother Eye just crashes into Earth, blowing apart into smithereens, and Hal Jordan is able to quickly grab Batman and save him from, dying alongside Brother Eye. So Brother Eye just falls into Earth's atmosphere and burns up and is destroyed, as far as we know. Alexander Luthor decides that fusing Earth 2 with another Earth isn't actually a bad idea, and so he grabs Earth 2 and he grabs Earth 3 and he says, like, oh, let's see what this Earth, let's see what I can create from this Earth. I've always believed that Luthor and Superman are supposed to be adversaries on every single Earth. Maybe the trick is to actually fuse them together. And so by combining Earth 2 with Earth 3, he tries to combine Superman with Lex Luthor. And Donna Troy is watching this happen, and she's basically like, we need to stop him now, because he is going to kill Superman and Wonder Woman if he succeeds in fusing these two Earths together. Like, it's going to kill them. And so Kyle Rayner and Starfire and Firestorm and Alan Scott, they all fly into Alexander Luthor's giant hands that are, meshing Earths together, and they attack his giant hand, and that causes Alexander Luthor to lose composure, and so he fails at merging Earth 2 and Earth 3, and that saves Superman and Wonder Woman's life. He's like, it doesn't matter, like, I'll find Earth 2 again, and I'll crush it. And then Nightwing just attacks him. He, like, just jumps out of nowhere and kicks Alexander Luthor in the face. And then Superboy's like, Alex? Well, not Superboy, sorry. Power Girl is like, Alex, you have a lot to answer for. And so they go around freeing all the people that are attached to Alexander Luthor's tower. Psycho Pirate shows up. He's like, I'm going to make you angry, Power Girl. So angry you're going to beat the Ray to death. Beat the light right out of him. Like Bizarro did to the Human Bomb. And then Black Adam shows up and he's like, Psycho Pirate. And Psycho Pirate looks at him and he's like, Black Adam, you're afraid. You're afraid. And before he can finish his sentence, Black Adam just stabs him in the eyes with his fingers. And then pushes his hand all the way through Psycho Pirate's head, killing him. Like, he just goes, and like his mask just comes out the back of his head and there's like brains and shit in his eye. It's pretty badass. He's like, no more silly faces. Power Girl was like, was that necessary, Adam? And he was like, absolutely. And then something attacks them out of nowhere. It's like, hello, Kara. And so Nightwing is like, I keep seeing more and more Earth replicating. I don't know how to shut it off. And Wonder Girl's like, then let's just tear the tower apart. And then Superboy's like, guys, down there, he's back. And it's revealed that Superboy Prime is back. And so he and Black Adam fight each other. Black Adam starts like beating him up. And Superboy's just like, the magic hurts. It hurts. And then he turns to Black Adam and he's like, actually, just kidding. It tickles. Black Adam's like, what? And then Superboy Prime just smacks him away. And Black Adam flies so far away that he just ends up being transported back to Earth S. And Superboy Prime's just like, why can't I just go back to my Earth? And Alexander is like, because you're not perfect anymore. The reason why you can't go back to your Earth is because you've been corrupted. And Superboy Prime is like, that wasn't my fault. Like, they pushed me to become this. They made me into this. It's like, I am going to find a way to make the perfect Earth no matter what it takes. Like, I will literally do anything to get it back now. Anything. And then Martian Manhunter attacks him. He's like, I do not know who you are, but I am called the Martian Manhunter. I am a sole survivor. And there is a reason for that. And he just punches Superboy Prime in the face. So it seems like Martian Manhunter is like as strong as Superboy Prime, which is pretty cool. So Superboy tries to destroy the tower with his tactile telekinesis. He's like, I don't know if it's going to take a while for me to do this. And, you know, we're fighting Superboy Prime, so we've got to keep him distracted while I do this. And so a bunch of the heroes keep Superboy Prime busy while Superboy tries to pull apart the tower with his abilities. And that involves, like, Nightwing actually fights Superboy Prime for a bit. Like, Nightwing, come on now. You actually think you can fight me? Oh, those Titans did too. Those stupid Titans. I'm going to tell you a secret. I wasn't even trying last time. And he goes straight towards Nightwing and he's like... And then Superboy, Connor Kent, just grabs Superboy Prime from behind and is like, neither was I. Round 2, bitch. And so Superboy and Wonder Girl begin fighting Superboy Prime. Superboy Prime grabs Wonder Girl by the face. He's like, why are you still fighting me? Don't you understand? Your time is over. We're going to have good heroes again. When we bring back my Earth, we'll have real heroes. And he grabs Wonder Girl's face and uses her to attack Superboy. He just, like, smacks her into his head. Like, smacks her head into his head. And then, like, keeps fighting them. And he's like, heroes who are polite and brave and honest. And no one will ever know what I had to do to bring my Earth back. No one! And then he hears, like, a no. And Superboy's like, I let you judge me. Beat me down. But you go after my girlfriend? And he punches Superboy Prime. You go after my family. After my world. No way! And he continues hitting Superboy Prime. No damn way! Superboy Prime attacks him. And then Superboy attacks Superboy Prime back. He's like, I'm sick of this hypocrisy. He's like, what does that word even mean? You probably think you're smart. You're not. And Superboy Prime grabs Connor Kent's hand and breaks his wrist. He's like, your world is finished. I'll be the real Superboy again. I will. Me! And then Superboy just charges straight into Superboy Prime. He's like, screw you, Superboy. And Connor Kent, grabbing Superboy Prime, just charges straight for Alexander Luthor's tower, and Alexander is like, no, keep back! And he just smashes straight into the tower, causing it to explode. The tower falls apart, Nightwing falls from the tower, and so does Wonder Girl. The entire tower just crumbles to pieces, and in doing so, reality shatters, and all of the Earths are merged into one Earth again, which is New Earth. And so Nightwing, like, runs through all the rubble, and Wonder Girl is, like, pulling rubble apart, and is like, Connor! And she finds him with, like, a massive piece of metal just sticking out of his gut. She's like, Connor! And Connor's just like, he said I wasn't the real Superboy. He was wrong. I just forgot for a little while. We all forgot. Don't let them forget again. Like, just hang in there, okay? You did it, Connor. You saved the Earth. You saved everyone. And Connor begins crying, and he's like, I know, Cass. Isn't it cool? And then his eyes roll back into his head, and Connor Kent succumbs to his wounds and dies. And so issue 6 ends with Wonder Girl just bawling her eyes out over Connor Kent's body as Nightwing, Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, and Earth 2 Superman arrive around him as Connor has sacrificed himself, and in doing so has also saved the entire universe. Alright, so next up we are going to be talking about the OMAC Project Special, which is tying up the OMAC Project and specifically Brother Eye. As we know at the end of, during Infinite Crisis issue 6, Brother Eye was sent falling into Earth's atmosphere. Turns out it is still alive, just badly damaged, and is trying to hook itself into Earth's networks so that it can learn everything about everyone, which it does. It knows absolutely everything. So the government wants to put a stop to it and get rid of Brother Eye once and for all. So Amanda Waller sends a bunch of mercenaries in to try and deal with Brother Eye, but Brother Eye actually takes over a couple of Saudi Arabian terrorists and transforms them into Omacs, and then uses those Omacs to kill these mercenaries. And so Amanda Waller is like, alright, we're going to need some bigger guns to go in and deal with this. And so she hires Beatrice DaCosta, aka Fire, to go and deal with Brother Eye. But then she learns that Sasha Bordeaux, who used to work for Maxwell Lord, is currently in Saudi Arabia and is going after Brother Eye herself. And Amanda Waller wants Sasha Bordeaux to come back to the States, and Sasha Bordeaux refuses, and so Amanda tells Fire to go and grab Sasha Bordeaux and bring her back, dead if she has to. Like, she needs to stop Sasha Bordeaux from coming in contact with Brother Eye, because Sasha Bordeaux was transformed into, like, a technological being by Brother Eye, and Amanda is afraid that Brother Eye is going to take over Sasha Bordeaux's body and use her as a weapon. So Fire goes to Saudi Arabia, where she comes face-to-face with Sasha. Apparently Amanda has dirt on Fire, like, has said that, like, Fire is a killer and that she's done horrible things for Brazil, which, as far as I know, is a complete retcon for Fire's character that I'm not really a fan of. This whole revelation that, oh, Fire used to be, like, a mercenary or something, or a killer, and that she's done some really dirty things for Brazil. It's like, why? Why are you turning Fire into this character that's apparently done horrible things and killed people? Like, it feels a little bit unnecessary when they do that to characters. When you take a character who is usually depicted as, like, being a very good person, or just, like, just a good person in general, like, just a regular person, and then turning them into having, like, a murderous past, or, like, they were doing, like, awful things before they became a superhero. Like, it's just unnecessary. So Fire tries to stop Sasha from going inside Brother Eye, because she's like, oh, it's like Brother Eye could take over and control you. And Sasha's like, I'm not going to let that happen. I am going to destroy Brother Eye. And Fire's like, but if you destroy it, it could kill you. And Sasha Bordeaux's like, I'm fine with that. Fire's like, alright, fine. But you make sure you get back here in one piece. So Sasha enters Brother Eye and learns from Brother Eye that she was created by Brother Eye and not Max Lord. And then Brother Eye tries to take over Sasha's body because he created Sasha as a body for itself. And so it like hooks all of its like weird tentacles into Sasha and tries to upload its data into her. But Sasha activates the C4 that she has with her. It's like, right in hell, brother. Click. And then blows up the satellite. And so Fire is like, oh crap. Like, she's dead. Like, Sasha was in there. Like, she destroyed Brother Eye, but she was in that explosion, so she must be dead. But then when the smoke and ash clears, they see Sasha's arm. They pull off a nearby metal pipe, and it turns out she's still alive. And so Sasha has managed to survive Brother Eye, and might even be turning back into a human again now that Brother Eye is dead, because like her metallic appearance begins to shed away and she turns back to normal. So either she's no longer got like this technological appearance anymore, or she can just shift between, you know, human form, technological form. All that matters is Brother Eye is gone forever, or at least for now. Pretty sure they brought Brother Eye back in like future comics anyway, so in the end this comic probably doesn't matter at all, because nothing in comic books matter. You know, you get even a robot can't be destroyed forever. Villains United has to be the most anticlimactic special out of all of them, because it doesn't even really tie up any of the plot threads like the other specials did. Like, the other specials finished the storylines that they were telling. You know, Day of Vengeance finished the Spectre stuff. You know, they defeated the Spectre and he got a new host. The OMAP Project, Brother Eye was destroyed. The Ranthanagar War ended in that special. You know, and but in this Villains United special, it doesn't end. Like, you would think like, oh, this would be like, oh, the Secret Six take down the Society of Supervillains, right? Because that's what the miniseries was setting up. And so you would think that it would be ended in this, like, it would end in this in this special, right? No, it doesn't. The problem with Villains United is that, like, we got an entire series building up to Infinite Crisis, and out of all of the miniseries, it felt like it was the one that mattered the least. Because reading Infinite Crisis, while the Society are there, the Secret Six are nowhere to be seen. And that miniseries focused heavily on the Secret Six being the ones that were going to take down the Society of Supervillains. And yet none of them have appeared in Infinite Crisis at all. Like, not even Deadshot, no Catman, none of them. They just don't matter. Like, they didn't appear at all. Anyone who did go after the Society of Supervillains in tie-ins or in the main series weren't the Secret Six and had nothing to do with the Secret Six. So it's like, what was even the point of the miniseries? Like, what were we setting up? Were we only setting up the Sinister, like, the Secret Six? Do I keep saying Sinister Six? I hope not. The Secret Six. Like, was the only purpose of the miniseries and this to set up the Secret Six series that would be continuing on from here? Because I think so. Like, this just feels like a pilot for that series instead of actually tying up any loose ends from the book. Like, am I going to have to read Secret Six if I want to see the conclusion of the Secret Society being defeated by the Secret Six? Look, I have plans in the future to read Secret Six eventually, but I was expecting to get the ending to the story that was built up that I'd spent time reading, and the fact that I didn't get that within this special is quite frustrating. You know, I shouldn't have to read how many issues are in the Secret Six series? There's like 50 issues. Like, I shouldn't have to read like that series just to get to the ending, like the ending that I was expecting to get long before that anyway. I don't know. It just feels a little bit like they're just teasing the reader, where they're like, oh yeah, you read that entire 6-issue miniseries and this special? Well, you're not getting the satisfying ending that you were hoping to get. Like, you're not getting any kind of ending. Because the Secret Society, throughout that miniseries, were planning to stage a massive breakout. And the breakout happens in this issue. All of the villains break out of the prison, and a lot of the superheroes have to get together and fight them. The only ones who don't fight them are the Secret Six. They don't fight the Secret Society at all in this, which is really disappointing. So not only do they not appear in Infinite Crisis at all, they also don't really do anything in their own special. You know, at the beginning of it, they're at a diner where they're just eating food. And for the rest of the issue, they're just watching everyone else do the work for them. In fact, at the very end, a Doomsday clone is created by the Secret Society, and they unleash it on the city, a city, I don't know which city it is. And so the superheroes all get together in order to fight this clone of Doomsday. And what does the Secret Six decide to do? Just not get involved at all. They don't do anything. They just get into a helicopter, and Catman's like, we're not stepping in, we're not dealing with this, let's just go. And then they leave. And that's how it ends. It ends with the Secret Six seeing that Doomsday is causing all sorts of chaos, and Catman just basically says, screw that, I'm not going to do anything, let's just leave the superheroes to deal with their own mess, and we'll just go chill somewhere and wait for a different mission to do. And that's it. Very, very disappointing special. Yeah, super disappointing. I was not a fan of this at all. Like, all the other specials had satisfying endings and conclusions to them. This one didn't have a conclusion. It just kind of ends. And so, now that that is over, we move on to the final issue of Infinite Crisis, issue 7. Let's hope this has a better ending than Villains United did. Alright, we finally make it to Infinite Crisis issue 7 now. There are things I like about this final, and there are things that I do not like about this final. One thing I don't like about this final is that it just has too many things going on at times, when it should be focusing more on other things. Like, the Secret Society of Supervillains do get tied up in this issue, but it's barely even a focus. It's kind of like, while the main plot's going on, all the heroes are fighting the Secret Society, and they beat them, like, in this issue, you know, and the Secret Six don't get to be here in order to help. So it's still disappointing. It's like, yes, we do get the conclusion to the Secret Society of Supervillains, but it's basically just a footnote in the final issue of Infinite Crisis. It's almost like they were like, oh, crap, we gotta wrap up that story. Alright, do it real quick. We'll wrap it up in this issue. Go, go, go. What really matters in this is that is Alexander Luthor and Superboy Prime. So while all of Earth's heroes are fighting the Secret Society and Doomsday, who is also here, you know, which also includes Superman and Earth 2 Superman fighting Doomsday at the same time, which is kind of cool. It's kind of cool to see, like, two different Supermen, you know, face Doomsday together and actually beat him. You know, while one Superman wasn't able to beat Doomsday, two can. After that, they decide to go after Alexander Luthor. And, yeah, Alex is just determined to pretty much, like, it's gotten to a point where he's basically just trying to create an Earth that only he exists on, because he now believes that everyone is the villain except for him. Like, he's the good guy and everyone else is the villain. And so his goal now is to basically just kill everyone, I guess. And Superboy Prime's goal is to cause another Big Bang, because he wants to kill everything in the entire universe so that he can be the only being left standing, because that's how far he's been pushed and that's how insane he's become. So the Flash shows up again. You know how we saw the Flash in the previous issue? He just came out of nowhere. We weren't sure which one it was going to be. He looked like Barry, but they never said it was Barry. Turns out this Flash is Bart Allen, because Bart Allen somehow had accelerated aging, and he's been given Barry's costume, and so now he's the Flash. And so he shows up and beats up Superboy Prime, because Superboy Prime is fighting Connor Kent and Wonder Girl and hurting them, and Bart Allen's just like, leave my friend alone! Didn't know Superboy Prime would go after him again. After Connor, you're roadkill. And that's when Superboy Prime is like, no, it was so much better when I was the only hero in this universe. I'll fly right through Oa, right through the planet at light speed. There'll be a new Big Bang, everything will restart, and I'll be the only one left again. And so he heads off in order to fly through Oa while the Green Lanterns head after him and try to stop him. Meanwhile, Batman fights Deathstroke and alongside Nightwing and Robin and manages to defeat him. And so Deathstroke is taken out of the picture. That's when Alexander Luthor shows up and is like, "Do you realize what you've done? You've damned this Earth. You've ruined everything." And so he shoots like a huge beam of negative energy, and Nightwing's like, "Batman, look out!" And he jumps into the way of the beam and possibly dies. Nightwing just gets blasted by the beam. He's like, "Nightwing! My power. I need more power." Batman's like, "No one else dies. Not because of you." And that's when the General, who is a villain, jumps out of nowhere and just comes crashing into the ground around Batman and Alexander Luthor, causing the ground to cave in. And so Batman and Luthor fall through, through the ground. Superboy Prime is flying through space to heading to Oa, and the Green Lanterns are trying to stop him using their powers. And so he just starts slaughtering the Green Lanterns. Like, he kills Green Lantern after Green Lantern. It's like, "Code is what this universe has made me." And he then grabs Guy Gardner by the throat and is like, "You're rude and offensive, Guy Gardner. I wonder who your ring is going to go to." And Hal shows up and he's like, "His ring stays with him," and gets Guy out of Superboy's grasp. And that's when the two Supermen show up, and they blast their way into Superboy Prime because he's like beating up Hal. And so the two Supermen show up in order to take on Superboy Prime. They smash into him, sending him colliding straight into a red sun. Meanwhile, Batman is gonna shoot Alexander Luthor in the head. He has a gun. He's gonna use it. He's like, "We're not so different, Bruce. Your parents were murdered. You worked to make the streets they were killed on safe. My Earth was murdered. I worked to make the universe it was killed in safe. You think too small, you save street corner by street corner. You work too hard for too little. But you finally decided to take a shortcut with Brother Eye. You just weren't going to take it far enough. You need to learn how to take shortcuts to justice." And Batman punches him in the face. It's like, "I know what Superman is going through." And he picks up Deathstroke's gun. "He doesn't deserve that. Superboy didn't deserve that. What do you deserve?" And he points the gun directly at Alexander's head. And then he hears a voice that's like, "Bruce." And it's like he's gonna actually shoot him. Like, it almost looks like he's gonna shoot him. And Wonder Woman shows up. She grabs her sword. She pulls it out. And then she just chucks it on the ground, showing Bruce that, like, she's not willing to kill Alexander because it's not the right way. And that he shouldn't either. Like, it's not worth it. And he pulls the gun away. He's like, "I know, damn it." And then Alexander Luthor is like, "This doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean you're better, Wonder Woman." And then suddenly the ceiling caves in and Alexander is seemingly crushed by the rubble. But Batman and Wonder Woman manage to get away. He's like, "Did he? I don't know." And so Batman looks at Nightwing and he's like, he's going to be fine. So we're getting confirmation that Nightwing isn't going to die. So Earth 2 Superman and Earth 1 Superman fight Superboy Prime in space, and they send him colliding straight with a red sun. They go straight through the red sun, and they land on Mogo, who is the giant Green Lantern who is a planet. And so Superboy Prime gets up and starts attacking Superman from Earth 1. But then all of a sudden his powers start fizzling out. And the reason why is because he went straight through a red sun, and so he's lost his abilities. And he's like, "My heat vision, what's happening?" And Earth 2 Superman's like, "You're losing," and punches him. He's like, "My armor. That red sun destroyed my armor. You took my superpowers. You said the Earth was dark and corrupted. You saw it all happen. You saw our sacrifice become pointless." And he starts like beating the crap out of Earth 2 Superman. "Lois died because of them. My Earth died because of them. You have to understand why I'm doing this." And suddenly Superman from Earth 1 grabs Superboy's hand. He's like, "Understand, Superboy," and throws him aside. He's like, "You're willing to destroy everything and everyone to feel what? Special? Needed?" And Superboy Prime's like, "I am special," and he grabs a piece of kryptonite and smacks Superman's face with it. It's like, "I'm the only one who can rescue this messed up universe. I'm the only one who knows how to make it right. I will be its greatest hero." And he starts strangling Superman from Earth 1. It's like, "When you're gone, I will be Superman." And then Superman grabs Superboy's the S on his chest. He's like, "Superman, And then he rips it off. He's like, you'll never be Superman because you have no idea what it means to be Superman. He's like, yes, I do. I'm from Krypton. A better Krypton than yours ever was. It's not about where you were born, or what powers you have, or what you wear on your chest. And Superboy Prime's like, shut up, and punches him in the face. And then Superman punches him back in the face. And they just trade blows with each other. And then Superman gets the final blow on him, knocking him out. It's like, it's about what you do. It's about action. And then Superman passes out because there's kryptonite everywhere. But then the Green Lanterns come along and they destroy the kryptonite, saving Superman's life. And then they contain Superboy Prime in like a ton of constructs, like a huge construct prison. That should hold that psycho. Thanks for the assistance, Mogo. And then Mogo talks to them and is like, I'm sorry for all the losses of the Green Lanterns that have happened during this war. Martian Manhunter comes in and he picks up Superman. He's like, you okay? And he's like, I'm okay, John. And then Power Girl shows up and sees Earth 2 Superman. She's like, Kara, we stopped him. Superman stopped him. You're going to be fine. You have to be fine. It's okay. No, don't leave me alone, Cal. Please, don't leave me alone again. It can't end this way. Kara, I finally understand. I know what Lois was trying to tell me. What are you talking about? I'll always be with you, Kara. Even if you can't see me, I'll always be here. It's not going to end. It's never going to end for us. One day you'll see. They're still out there. Lois. And so Earth 2 Superman dies. He passes away and he gets to live with Lois, presumably in heaven, I would assume. So he gets like a happy ending, I guess. He gets to be with the one he loves. And so, you know, the heroes go around and they wrangle up the last of the remaining supervillains. Bart Allen goes to Jay and explains to him that he managed to get out of the Speed Force. Like, he had enough speed energy to get out. But he's not the Flash. Like, he takes off the Flash costume and he's like, I'm not the Flash. You're the Flash. Like, you're the only Flash, Jay. And he gives Jay Barry's old costume. He's like, you're the fastest man alive again. And then we see that Alexander Luthor is still alive in Gotham City. He says that he's going to continue his plans and make the world a brighter place. He's like, I will make it perfect. And then he starts hearing a maniacal laughter. He's like, who's there? And suddenly a bunch of acid gets shot in his eye. It melts like half his face. And then he sees like a hand with a joy buzzer on it. He's like, well, wait! And the Joker just comes out of nowhere and just like slams a joy buzzer on his face, electrocuting Alexander. He's like, help! Somebody, help! And that's when Lex Luthor appears. He's like, oh, Alex, you made a lot of mistakes. You underestimated Superman, Superboy, me, but the biggest one, no, please, you didn't let the Joker play. Because as we remember earlier on, the Joker wanted to be a part of the Secret Society, but they didn't invite him, and he was very upset about that. So we're actually getting a conclusion to that story. That was something I wasn't expecting. I'd honestly forgotten about that whole thing with the Joker. So the fact that that gets a resolution at the end of this is really funny. Like, he gets to be the one that kills Alex. So he pulls out his gun. The Joker pulls out his gun, and Lex is like, you didn't let the Joker play. And the Joker just shoots Alex off panel and kills him. And you just hear like a blam, and then Joker's laughter. He's like, now who's stupid? And so Diana and Clark Kent and Bruce Wayne decide that they're going to retire from their superhero identities for a little bit and, you know, go and be normal people for a while and leave the world to be protected by everyone else because of all of the stuff that they've been through in Infinite Crisis. Like, they feel that they need a lot of therapy. For Bruce, it's the fact that he almost resorted to shooting someone. It's at this point where he's like, alright, I gotta take a break from being Batman for a little while because, like, I almost shot a guy. I almost went against everything I believed in. You know, the death of Earth 2 Superman and everything that happened with Superboy has left Clark Kent feeling that he needs to take a break from being Superman. But he knows that there are other super people like Supergirl and Power Girl who can keep Metropolis safe in his stead while he's, you know, having therapy. And Diana wants to get more in touch with her human side, because she's been so committed to being Wonder Woman that she's lost her, like, she feels like she's losing her humanity and she wants to become one with it again. So she decides to take a break from being Wonder Woman for a while. So they all go their separate ways, and Clark visits Lois. She's like, a world without Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, huh? For now, Lois. And what are you going to do with all this free time, Mr. Kent? And Clark just walks up to her and kisses her, and he's like, I'm sure I'll figure out something. But until we're back, I'd say things are in good hands. And it ends with a huge 2-page splash of every single hero in the DC universe. Including Black Adam, because Black Adam is considered to be more of a hero now than a villain. And then we get a little bit of an epilogue where it's revealed that the Green Lanterns are holding Superboy Prime in a prison specifically made for him, which is the center of a red sun. Superboy Prime burns an S into his chest. It's like made out of blood. He's like, I've been in worse places than this, and I've gotten out. And so it's kind of like alluding to the idea that Superboy Prime is going to be coming back at some point in the future. And so that's it. That's the end of Infinite Crisis. Overall, I can see why people really love this. I wouldn't say it's perfect. It does have its issues, namely some of the plot threads are a little bit like uninteresting, but I think the core of the story about Superboy Prime and Earth 2 Superman and Alexander Luthor is why this miniseries is so good. Superboy Prime is one of the best villains that DC has introduced in a while, especially from what I've read, and I went into this completely blind. I knew who Superboy Prime was before this. I just didn't know the story behind him or anything, so it was really interesting to read this for the first time and get to see all of that. Like, the fight between him and the Titans was probably one of my favorite moments in this, because it's the first time you realize that, like, things are serious and that Superboy Prime is dangerous, because, like, he's accidentally killing these Titans. And so you feel a little bad for him, because, like, he's not trying to be evil. He's just going down the wrong path completely by accident. Like, he doesn't have full control over his powers, and there are consequences to that. Like, the moment he blew off, like, Panther's head with his fist, like, that gagged me. Like, I was just, like, I didn't know what to say. Like, it was insane. It was one of the most shocking moments that I've read, especially because I've been reading I've been reading Teen Titans since the beginning, and so to see a character that I've known for quite some time just get their head blown clean off out of nowhere was pretty shocking. Risk getting his arm ripped off, stuff like that. Yeah, it was great seeing, like, the different arcs that different characters went through, where, like, Superboy Prime went the wrong way alongside Alexander Luthor. It was great seeing the opposite of that with Superman from Earth 2, where, like, he started off being a little bit villainous with, like, having the same motivations as Alexander Luthor, because he's just doing it for Lois, but eventually the goodness in him comes through, and he shows that he really, truly is Superman, because Superman is good, and that's why these ideas of, like, most ideas of evil Superman don't work, because the inherent, like, thing with Superman is that he is good. And if you're not a good Superman, then you're not Superman. And that was the point that Superman was making to Superboy Prime, is that because Superboy Prime was evil, he's not Superman. All of those evil Supermen technically aren't Superman. Like, they shouldn't be able to call themselves that, because you can't be Superman and be evil. You get it? You get what I mean? So, yeah, like, overall, I thought Infinite Crisis was great. The only storyline in it that I wasn't a huge fan of was the Villains United storyline with the Secret Society of Supervillains. It felt like the one that was neglected the most, and it was kind of wrapped up in the background of the final issue, so I wasn't really a fan of that. Wasn't really a fan of how the Secret Six played such a small role overall. Like, they had this whole mini-series about them, and then they didn't even end up doing anything in Infinite Crisis. Like, that was disappointing. Like, the setup was great. That was the disappointing thing about it. I really enjoyed the mini-series, and I was disappointed that the mini-series didn't end up mattering all that much. When it comes to Bart Allen as the Flash and being aged up, also not a fan of that. I did some research, and I did know about that beforehand, because it's really, like, being a Flash fan, it's not hard to, like, it's hard not to know about that stuff. It was something that Mark Waid and Jeff Johns tried to stop editorial from doing. They wanted to make Bart Allen the Flash, and Mark and Jeff fought against it, and they lost. You can't win every battle. They won the battle against killing off Nightwing, but they couldn't win the battle against making Bart Allen the Flash. And we'll actually be getting into more of that soon, because next week we are going to be covering The Flash Fastest Man Alive, which is a miniseries that takes place during 52, which is another DC event that we'll be covering the week after that. That revolves entirely around Bart Allen becoming the new Flash. It's like a 13-issue miniseries, so we'll be covering all of that next week. I hope you enjoyed my deep dive of Infinite Crisis. I enjoyed it too. I wouldn't recommend reading all the tie-ins for Infinite Crisis. The only ones I would recommend reading are the mini-series like OMAC Project and Villains United and that, plus the specials. There aren't very many singular tie-ins that I would say are worth reading. Like, maybe the Teen Titans ones. Like, basically any that are written by Jeff Johns are probably worth reading, while the rest aren't. The Robin ones are cool, though. Him fighting Neomax. A couple of Wonder Woman ones are pretty cool, with them fighting Neomax as well. But overall, most of the times just don't really matter, or barely anything happens in them. But yeah, I'll see you next week for The Flash Fastest Man Alive.
In the shadows of the multiverse, the echoes start to rise. Heroes clash and worlds collide, and the blood red skies. Soria's tears, a harbinger of doom and dark despair. A twisted plot folds as villains lay the snare. Spectre's wrath unleashed, a cosmic game begins. Open fear entangled as reality spins. A battle for existence for every soul and star. In the heart of chaos, who we are. Infinite crisis, worlds are torn asunder. Infinite crisis, feel the raging thunder. Infinite crisis, destinies entangled. Infinite crisis, as the heroes scramble. Earths collide, the shadows rise from the antimatter wave. Alexander Luthor's twisted mind, heroes fight to save. Superboy, pilot fallen, some with fury in his hands. To save the fractured timelines, what destiny demands. Spectre's wrath unleashed, a cosmic game begins. Open fear entangled as reality spins. A battle for existence for every soul and star. In the heart of chaos, who we are. Infinite crisis, worlds are torn asunder. Infinite crisis, feel the raging thunder. Infinite crisis, destinies entangled. Infinite crisis, as the heroes scramble. And the shadows rise, the fear we cannot see. Echoes of a future that was never meant to be. Heroes clash, in darkness they fight, trying to hold on to the fading light. Infinite crisis, worlds are torn asunder. Infinite crisis, feel the raging thunder. Infinite crisis, destinies entangled. Infinite crisis, as the heroes scramble. In the aftermath, the echoes slowly fade. A new dawn arises from the chaos that was made. But the scars remain, the battles they fought. In the infinite crisis, the lessons they've taught. In the aftermath, the echoes slowly fade. A new dawn rises from the chaos that was made. But the scars remain, the battles they fought. In the infinite crisis, the lessons they've taught.